Alright guys, how are you doing today? So this is going to be a rather funny video, and it follows on from something I spoke about a few months ago when we covered the Obi-Wan Kenobi show Marvel Comics adaptation. There were YouTube videos, articles, talking about the lazy artwork that was traced. Stylistic decisions aside, the Obi-Wan Kenobi comic adaptation was an absolute stinker. Really embarrassing for Marvel Comics, it was being spoken about across the internet. And at the time, there was a very good video by John Del Arroz explaining the situation. He was told by a comic book industry insider the reason there isn't much emphasis put on the quality of comic book adaptations of TV shows is they know they're going to sell based on name recognition alone. So they don't bother as much. They cut corners, they use tracing methods of penciling, and they figure because the comic is not an original story, they don't have to put in the same effort. But the thing is, even by that very principle, the quality has significantly dipped year after year. And today, my dear friends, we're not talking about Kenobi, we're talking about Ahsoka. The final issue of the comic adaptation has finally been released. Episode 8, The Jedi, the Witch and the Warlord. There were some fantastic moments. Balon standing on the statue of the Ones, Anakin's Force ghost, the fight between Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth. But then there were some more controversial moments, like Sabine Wren's Force push. Nonetheless, Marvel Comics subsequently released an 8-part series adaptation, and I have found it's been very inconsistent, but Part 8 is especially horrifying. I haven't seen the infamous Salvador Larroca's name on this. That's the tracing artist, who many fans blame for the Obi-Wan abomination. But with or without him, the Ahsoka comic artwork is really bad. Let's take a look. This is when Grand Admiral Thrawn is ready to depart Peridea. They've loaded the secret cargo, the mysterious catacombs. And as we know from the end of the episode, he's preparing to go to Dathomir. But take a look at the way they've massacred the proportions of the characters' faces. It just looks so amateurish. And before you say, Meg, you're being too critical, compare this awful drawing of Thrawn to the way he was drawn back in the 1990s comic runs. Like the adaptation of Heir to the Empire, it's night and day. And if Thrawn isn't bad enough, take a look at Morgan Elsbeth. I mean, for a minute I thought this was an alien from Canto Bight. And you know, maybe I'd missed something the first time I saw the episode, but no. This is Morgan Elsbeth. What is going on with her forehead and her nose? And it gets worse when you turn the page. Sometimes when there are close-ups, they're fine. But look at how they demolished Grand Admiral Thrawn. This is Marvel and Lucasfilm Comics. Surely there is something of a budget to do better than this. And Morgan Elsbeth. The nose, the spacing between the eyes, the forehead. Diana Lena Santo is beautiful. Morgan Elsbeth is such a badass character. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how'd you get it this wrong? And then you turn the page again, and then you're hit with the realization there aren't 2 frames of Morgan Elsbeth where she looks like the same character. Look at this. These are side by side. Lucasfilm has no respect for its own shows and its own characters. I was reading just the other day how Star Wars is statistically at an all-time low, and while comics might be lower on the list of reasons like poor quality shows, fan apathy, it's still a contributing factor. It's been a downhill slope for years. The Vader comics were great, the 2015 run, the 2017 run, even a couple in 2020, but fans don't care as much anymore. I remember a time not too long ago where you would do anything to get your hands on the new Vader comics. I could go on for days about the 90s Dark Horse comics, but I'm not even talking about that far back. Even during the Disney era, this subpar quality of this Ahsoka comic would never have been approved in a Vader comic in 2020. Okay, so then we come on to some Ezra Bridger and Hu Yang. It's a little bit better, but still pretty shoddy. But then, I don't know what it is about this picture of Morgan Elsbeth. It shouldn't be as funny to me as I found it. She looks like if you asked an AI generator to regurgitate a drawing of Morgan Elsbeth. She looks like a sad puppy. Like I said, I don't know how this ever got approved. Then we have some of the Battle of Peridea, and some of these scenes are pretty awesome. Our heroes, Ahsoka, Ezra and Sabine taking out the Night Troopers, were very comic book-esque when the show aired, so no criticism from me. I think that looks pretty awesome. Even the Great Mothers look very ghoulish. They somehow have an added depth, an added element of horror. And just when you think it's getting good, you turn to the next page and once again, an inconsistent Morgan Elsbeth with an indecisive forehead. Do you know what this reminds me of? Have you ever had one of those dreams where you're in a place that you recognize, but it's not 100% that place. Like some of the features, some of the details are slightly off. And as the dream goes on, those details keep changing, and it's never really quite the same. And this also applies to dreams about people you know, whether it's the way they dress, their height, facial features, because I guess our brain reconstructs, it doesn't replay. Your childhood home might not look right at first, has an extra room, or a missing staircase. And so this comic is to the Ahsoka show what those dreams are to our reality, a vague jumbled up recollection. I will give it this though, the look on the face of the undead night trooper is badass when it's killed by Sabine Wren. And speaking of Sabine, her profile is wildly inconsistent. The shape of her nose changes in every panel. The look on Ahsoka's face when they're trying to leave Peridea but fail is pretty priceless. And when she looks at Anakin's Force Ghost, I'm sorry, that's not Ahsoka Tano. The very unsettling proportions, her Leiku, and in the final frame of Anakin's Force Ghost, I've seen fans on social media say it looks really bad, but compared to what we've just witnessed, this could be a lot worse. At least it's obvious who this character is, and at least his eyes are on his head, and he doesn't have an eyebrow falling off the side of his mouth. Not too bad. I mean, for goodness sake, when Ezra comes home, Hera's reaction looks right out of Five Nights at Freddy's. Ezra's like, "Hi Hera, I'm home," and she's like, "Ezra," and then he walks away, and we never hear from Ezra ever again. I'm just being silly. In terms of Baylan, I get this is like a faraway shot. Yeah, it's not great. He isn't the center of this episode, so whatever. But they should definitely have higher standards. And look, joking aside, I know this video was very light-hearted. This isn't the first time I've spoken about the problem with recent Star Wars comics. In this instance, and in the case of the Obi-Wan comic, it was the visual art style. But sometimes it's the story, and that is such a shame. Because just a few years ago, Marvel Star Wars comics in the Disney era were some of the best sellers of the decade. Only a couple of years ago, even up to the release of Mando Season 2, Star Wars comic content was very sought after. There was interest in the canon and in the lore. But Disney doesn't respect the characters and definitely doesn't keep to its own canon. Whether it's retconning of their comics, the Battle of Jakku debacle, where events didn't align with their own Aftermath trilogy, or basically retconning the entire Ahsoka novel. If they're sending the message that they don't care, then why are fans gonna care? Honestly, a real shame. I'm still very excited for Ahsoka Season 2 though, guys. The show itself is very promising, but yeah, this comic was a letdown. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new. We're so close to 140,000 subscribers. Check me out on socials, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.